Welcome, everybody, to the latest episodes of True Believers here on the Fandom Podcast Network. Of course, this is a show that covers everything on the MCU, and we are going to be wrapping up Secret Invasion with this latest episode here on the Fandom Podcast Network. But you know what? I can't go looking for scrolls and trying to stop nuclear war and World War III and finding out who's a spy, who's a scroll, whatever. It's all so confusing. But I got a man here that hopefully is going to help me sort some of this out. He is, of course, the wonderful co-founder of the Fandom Podcast Network, my brother from another mother, Mr. Kevin Reitzel.
Otherwise known as Super Scroll.
Please, no more of those. we have much to talk about in this episode, guys. Secret Invasion has wrapped up. A lot of thoughts that are there, which we're going to get to in this episode. But we do have some other things happening in the MCU that I want to talk about real quick. So let's hit it with some MCU news. It's time for Snit, Thwip, and Kapow. Let's get to some MCU news. So, Kevin, while the week over San Diego Comic-Con, Marvel dropped their first official trailer for The Marvels, the next movie in the MCU universe.
When's it coming out again?
Well, yeah, we're going to get to that too. But I got to admit, I've been feeling a little up and down about this movie. I wasn't quite sure that the first little teaser trailer we got had some things intriguing. I really like this trailer. This movie actually looks like it's going to be a lot of fun. And one of the things I noticed about it and just right off the bat for me was it feels like Brie Larson's a little bit more loose with her performance, at least from in the trailer. Like she's having a little more fun and just a different energy in this trailer than she had in even the entire first Captain Marvel film.
Yes, it does look fun, and I agree with you. She looks like her character has loosened up a little bit. She's always been so serious, you know. Kamala looks fun because she's basically us as fans. You know, she's fans of the Avengers, and she's really excited about becoming one of them or working with them or teaming up with them. Also, I guess nowadays it is trailer gold or soundtrack gold if you throw the Beastie Boys soundtrack behind whatever you're playing. I don't know if you've noticed that, but it seems like Beastie Boys are popping up everywhere. They'd be they're kind of a go-to when it comes to soundtrack or trailers and stuff, which is okay. But I enjoyed the new trailer. I was curious about seeing it with the original trailer, and I'm a little more excited about this. It just looks fun.
I agree. I think one of the big things for me, Kevin, with this, and this is something that maybe I didn't agree with so much either with Miss Marvel because I was kind of up and down on Miss Marvel. But one of the things that I did like about Miss Marvel and the young actress who plays it, she's bringing an energy to the MCU that I think we haven't experienced since Tom Holland first came in as Spider-Man. She's bringing kind of this youthful energy, and I think it's really showing in this trailer. And from what I've gathered from some of the behind-the-scenes pics and stuff, it helped with the other actors, just her energy transferring to these other actors and kind of bringing everybody up on an energy level. Just from what I've seen in some from behind-the-scenes photos and some of the comments that have been made.
Full disclosure, too, Kyle, I might have a little crush on Brie Larson, so I'm looking forward to seeing her in this.
Yeah, I can understand that completely. I think there's been some pics, but yeah, you know how it goes. But yeah, excited for the Marvels. But Kevin, there's a slight maybe issue with the Marvels too. It is scheduled for a early November release as it stands right now. But thanks to events in Hollywood, the writer's strike, the actor strike, the moving movie shuffle has begun. There's been some talk of some major films getting moved around, and
they don't want to release these unless the actors do press for them, right?
Correct. They want the actors to do press. But let me ask you this: see what you think, because I think a movie like The Marvels and something like Dune, Dune Part 2, which they're talking about moving now from its November release, do those movies really need the actors out there marketing for them?
Yeah, they do. It's a big deal. It really, really is, because it reminds people that these movies are out there for the casual viewers. Diehard fans forget where most of the money comes from. It's not us. It's the casual movie goers that want to go, you know what, let's go check out that new Marvel movie. That looks fun. I saw that girl, what's her name, being interviewed on what's her morning show. No, it's huge. It really is, because those all come across my Facebook feeds, my Twitter feeds, whatever it is. Yes, it's very important for, and a lot of these contracts they sign require them to be part of the press packets. So yes, it is very, very important. It's vital to the promotion of these films, especially like I forget. I think it's Wired does those really cool, funny interviews. Like they'll have you the stars do it together, and it's like the most searched things about them, and they'll peel the little thing off. Have you seen these before, Kyle?
Yeah. Hmm.
Wired something's most searched things, and usually it'll have they'll have co-stars kind of like quizzing each other, like Robert Downey Jr. Looks like or doesn't like or likes to, and it's little things like that that are always going on my feed, and it's crucial, and it's also part of the fun as well of hyping up these movies. And seeing when you see casts gelling and having fun in interviews before you see the movie, it adds to the experience.
I agree with exactly what you said. I just, sometimes you wonder, just because of the situations in some of these bigger films, can they carry their own merit?
I think that, and I would support delay of any of these big films until actors, the whatever strike, whenever these strikes do come to an agreement, and something happens, and they agree on both sides to do whatever, especially this whole figuring out this whole streaming thing. I think they should wait. They should delay these movies until the actors can help promote them.
At the end of the day, I agree with you, and I think it's the right way to go. I think it kind of, for us who are been excited for some of these movies, it's a bummer, but it is a situation, and the actors and writers both deserve to get the credit and the funding that they should be getting, and they're not right now. And I think there's, you know, we need to get this squared away. But enough on that. Let's start talking some Secret Invasion.
Give me, Kyle. My short-term memory has failed me here. Did we let the listeners and viewers know that we are covering two episodes, episode 5, Harvest, and episode 6, Home of Secret Invasion?
We haven't, but you just did. But what's funny is, let's hit one of the elephants in the room. I know a lot of big podcasts who have done that, did the exact same thing. Episode 5 came out, and they're like, you know what? We're just going to do
And that's
both
because the
episodes.
show is not as good as they were hoping. That's the reason why we are doing this, Kyle. We're a little disappointed or underwhelmed or what have you. And we'll share some Facebook comments that some feel the same way. So,
Yeah, we're going to have thoughts all over the place. But before we go any further, for those of you that may not have watched these episodes of Secret Invasion yet, as always, spoilers ahead. We are going to be diving into episode 5 and episode 6 of Secret Invasion, as well as some conversation about the series overall in this episode of True Believers. So if you have not watched those episodes and would like to watch them before we talk about them, pause, come back, rejoin us. We got a lot of thoughts. But with that, Kevin, would you be so kind as to give us the plot synopsises for these episodes, starting with episode 5, Harvest?
all right. Episode 5, Harvest of Secret Invasion. Following their failed attack on Ritson, the U.S. president, the rebels start to lose faith in Gravik for not killing Fury and his perceived deception towards them. A new recruit named Beto leads a small group in mounting a mutiny, but Gravik kills them all. Meanwhile, Fury gets Ritson to the hospital and confronts Rava, but she reveals that she has leaked footage of Hill's death, placing Fury on a global watch list. Fury later meets with Gaia, who reveals Gravik is looking for the harvest. After exposing his superior Derek Weatherby as a Skrull, Fallsworth locates Dr. Rosa Dalton, another disguised Skrull, and questions her about Gravik's DNA machine. Rava, as Rhodes, shows Ritson's pictures of Gravik's Russian base, New Skrolios, to implicate Russia as Skrull sympathizers and advise a strike on the compound. Gravik calls Fury, offering to call off the strike if he brings him the harvest in person. Gaia and Vara hold a funeral for Talos and fend off an attack by Gravik's men. In Finland, Fury leads followers to a grave marked with his name, which contains the Harvest, a collection of DNA from superheroes who fought during the Battle of Earth. Fury takes the Harvest and prepares to confront Gravik.
So that was episode 5. We're going to give you the plot synopsis for episode 6, Home, and then we're going to talk about both of these episodes. So, Kevin, I'm just going to hand it right back over to you.
All right, episode 6, Home, Secret Invasion. Fury confronts Gravik as New Skrullos and gives him the Harvest, while asking him to spare Earth and go conquest other planets. Gravik refuses and powers himself up with the Harvest's DNAs. He attempts to kill Fury with his new powers, but discovers that it was Gaia in disguise, who also has gained the same powers as him. The two battle one another, but Gaia eventually gains the upper hand and kills Gravik. Meanwhile, Rava successfully convinces Ritson to authorize a nuclear strike on New Skrullos, but is tricked by Falsworth into arranging an evacuation for Ritson. Falsworth and the real Fury confront Rava and reveal the truth to Ritson. Rava attempts to retaliate, but is killed by Fury. Ritson calls off the strike, allowing Gaia to free the humans trapped under New Skrullos, including the real Ross and Rhodes. In the aftermath, Ritson issues a new bill declaring all off-world species as hostile forces and threatens to hunt down the remaining Skrulls on Earth, causing unrest as civilians publicly murder random high-profile officials. Falsworth meets with Gaia and proposes a partnership to help protect the Skrulls against Ritson's bill. Fury asks Vara to come to Saber with him to help negotiate a peace summit with the Cree. She agrees, and they leave Earth together.
Okay, Kevin. So I have a question for you before we give our thoughts on this, because I know you were at San Diego Comic-Con, and I am curious how you watched these 2 episodes. Because did you wait and watch them together, or did you watch them at separate times?
Oh, I watched them at separate times. Yeah.
Okay. So,
but let me tell you something.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm really excited about a Disney Plus series like Mandalorian, or usually most Star Wars stuff, but also, the first run of a lot of these Disney Plus shows, they've been dropping on Wednesdays, and I have had Wednesdays off. I would watch them like first thing in the morning. Like I would get up early and watch them to make sure there are no spoilers and stuff like that. But as of lately, Kyle, I may not have watched this right away. I may not be in a hurry to jump on it. If a spoiler comes my way, whatever. As you know, guys, if you've been watching or listening to True Believers covering the Secret Invasion series here, I have been underwhelmed and a little disappointed with the series overall, and have not been excited about how it ends.
Yep, we had a little bit of that conversation last episode, but let's get into some of our thoughts on these final 2 episodes. I'm going to start with episode 5, Home. I actually liked some of the things they did in this episode. I was actually coming when this episode ended. I felt a little hope, like, okay, the way it ends, Fury, maybe we're getting Fury back to being Fury. But then he's finally hit that point. I actually liked a lot of the stuff they did with Sonya Falsworth in this episode. I actually even really liked the action scene with Gaia and Fury's wife in that, where they're fighting off the invaders in her home. I actually thought that was a pretty cool action scene. So while there's still some things that left me a little bit, and I'll get to those a little bit later, I actually came out of episode 5 feeling like, okay, maybe they're going to stick the landing here a little bit. Maybe not fully redeem everything, but at least give us something enjoyable. Were you feeling any kind of that energy coming out of episode 5, Home, Kevin?
No. The only thing I was excited for was Falsworth. Olivia Coleman is Falsworth. She's the high point of this show and the character that she's playing. I enjoy every moment that she is in, and I was just like, as long as it has Fallsworth, that's all I care about.
Yeah. Which leads us into episode 6, which came out yesterday as we're recording. We're recording this on a Thursday. I'm gonna say it. This episode was easily the worst thing Marvel has ever done.
Wow. Hold on, Eternals?
I'm gonna say this Eternals was better than this episode.
Wow. I wasn't expecting that from you, Kyle. Wow.
So here is my problem with this episode.
Doctor Strange 2?
Doctor Strange 2 was
AntMan
better than
3?
this. Yep. Yep.
Thor Dark World?
Yep.
Wow.
This finale was one of the laziest written finale things that Marvel has ever done. It
Give it to me. Give it to me.
It did not answer any of the questions or any of the things that the series initially set up on. It had horrible CGI. I mean, the scroll fight was terrible. There were so many plot lines that they tried to bounce around. None of the resolutions felt like they meant anything. The only thing that I came out of here, there was two things that I came out of here with. Okay, so they're going to carry this on to something else. I'm a little intrigued of what they're going to do is with certain characters who had been kidnapped by Skrulls and replaced, because I think there's some interesting storylines they could do there, and how they left the situation on Earth with the human race being so paranoid of everybody being Skrulls, and the president at the time, Ritson, saying all off-world species are hostile, because the first question I had was, okay, what about New Asgard? That's all off-world species.
Yeah, that's a good point. I forgot about that.
Which actually, and I'll just say this now, that could throw up an idea that they did in the comics of a storyline called Siege when Asgard was on Earth for a while. That was actually kind of interesting. And I think that whole thing with Ritson and stuff like that, we're going to get into that a little bit in the Easter eggs too, but it could be set up for other projects coming. But I came away after watching this going, I got no resolution to anything. I got one new character out of this series that has gotten me any interest. And
they killed off two kind of main characters too.
Yeah, and have left the status of one of the main character, one of the biggest character, well, not one of the biggest, but one of the main characters of the MCU in a really interesting state of limbo. So, but I feel like at the end of this, when this episode wrapped up, I just feel like, so what was the point of this whole series?
Yeah. You know, I started thinking about it as you were talking, Kyle. I'm like, okay, so we've seen the trailer for the Marvels, and that kind of has a fun tone to it. And this is supposed to take place after this. How are we supposed to take the Marvels if all of this stuff is either, if it doesn't come to a conclusion in the Marvels or even mentioned in the Marvels? You know, it's weird, isn't it?
It's weird, and I've read online, and I'm going to get into this a little bit more when we get into Phase 3, Kevin. But from what I've read, the Marvels now is set up to carry over and be a kind of a sequel to not only this, but Captain Marvel itself, Miss Marvel, and some leftover plot threads dangling from Avengers Endgame. So all of a sudden, you've got a lot of stuff riding on the Marvels.
Yeah.
And so, but we're gonna get to that aspect of it here in a little bit. But I fired off my heavy shot here, Kevin. Would you care to follow up on things with episode 6?
I don't know if I'd call it the worst, but I get where you're coming from. Trust me, dude. Right there. You know, I've had my issues recently with some of the new stuff. What are we in? Phase 5 now? Phase 4?
We're in Phase 5.
Phase 5, yeah. Phase 5 has been kind of a hit and miss, mostly misses. And this one's a miss.
Started with AntMan, so this is only like the third thing.
Yeah, okay, so there you go. And AntMan was a disappointment for me. AntMan 3. They swung and a miss there, in my opinion. and this isn't helping the cause of Phase 5. And this is not what I wanted from this show. I was looking forward to it. It's not what I wanted from Nick Fury, and it did not stick the landing. I didn't care for the bad guy. They didn't make me care at all. I I guess there's a lot of things in this. And I liked it. I like that Nick Fury had a love interest. I just don't see why you would kill off Maria Hill in a situation like this, and kill off Talos. There's no reason to. I feel like Maria Hill's death meant nothing, especially since she's like killed in the first episode or second episode. She didn't get a chance to burn and kick some ass, and you these work better when you have somewhat of a team or a duo. Like I made the reference before. Which makes Winter Soldier work was that you had Black Widow and Captain America working together, and then you got Falcon in there as well. It wasn't a one-man show. And when Fury bounces off other people, I think and that's why I did like the moments with Fallsworth, Olivia Coleman's character, but there wasn't enough of those. It didn't save it, and there was no reason why you should have killed off Maria Hill. And I mean, nothing came from that. Nothing came from that. And I think that when you kill off someone like that, make it mean something. Let them work towards that. Don't let it be a thing. So it didn't stick the landing for me. As far as I'm concerned, Olivia Coleman's character is the only thing that I found redeeming in this entire series, to be perfectly honest with you. And I want to make something clear. I pay attention. I've been watching everything of the Marvel series at least once. And I'm invested in the MCU. Not the comics, the MCU. And it's been a major, major point of my fandom over the last 20 years. I've been to every single movie in its theatrical release. We've been watching these shows since day one and podcasting about them. It's not that I'm forgetting anything. If I do, I ask you, and then I reevaluate my opinion. I just feel there's just been a lack of good planning and writing when it comes to a lot of these Disney Plus Marvel MCU shows. And I'm trying to look back, Kyle. Hawkeye was a lot of fun. Moon Knight was okay. Falcon and Winter Soldier was fun. Loki didn't do it for me. What else was there? WandaVision was weird. Okay. What else am I missing out there, Kyle?
So you got Hawkeye. I think that covers most of what we've got.
Miss Marvel,
Yeah, Miss Marvel was fun.
The only thing that did was introduce the word mutants. Yeah, I mean, I think Hawkeye for me was the most fun series for me personally.
I think for me, it's Hawkeye and Falcon and Winter Soldier.
Yeah, and those were duos that worked together, or trios and stuff like that. I don't know, those clicked for me more. The Marvel Disney Plus series have been mostly misses or for me. And it's been like that with the end of Phase 4 and beginning of Phase 5 as well. I mean, Eternals. I feel like Marvel's just pushed Eternals underneath the rug because of how that laid.
Well, we're going to get into some of that when we get into Phase 3, because I want to talk about the series as a whole. You talked about a few things that I'm going to bring up in Phase 3, but Kevin, there was actually I will say this, there was some fun Easter eggs and some interesting Easter eggs in these 2 episodes. So I'm going to shift us into Phase 2 to talk some Easter eggs of Secret Invasion. So Kevin, we had several fun Easter eggs in both of these. I'm going to start with a few Easter eggs from episode 5. Harvest. I actually like this little cameo, bringing back Mason from the Black Widow film. For those of you who might remember, this was a fun little scene. He was, of course, the ally of Natasha Romanoff, who helped her get out of the country and get back to Russia, and was doing little
I
favors for her.
recognize this. I was like, that guy looks familiar. Hold on. I think he was in Black Widow. I just didn't remember his name. But what I liked about this scene was it was a throwback to Black Widow where he's helping these Avengers out, but he doesn't really quite feel appreciated for the work that he's done.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I like to see more of this guy. It's Rick Mason, right? Is that who he is?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, that was a good callback.
yeah. Of course, if you're looking for appreciation from Fury, you're probably not ever going to get it. So
Yeah.
So now I might have just brought this up just so I could put Scarlett Johansson on the screen here, because from Winter Soldier, my favorite Black Widow look. I'm going to be honest with you.
I'm sorry. What'd you say, Kyle? I wasn't paying attention.
Yeah, but we had a little bit of a reference back to Winter Soldier as Fury was using that Widow's Veil technology that Black Widow used at the end of Winter Soldier to disguise herself to infiltrate the Shield headquarters and get close to Alexander Pierce. We see Fury with using it to hide himself, getting into Russia where he meets up with, or getting to meet up with Sonya Falsworth. And I gotta say, Kevin, I didn't mention it in when we talked about the plot episodes. One of the most fun moments of the entire series is when Falsworth and Fury are sitting in the car and the music starts playing, and Fury goes, "So that's the choice you're making." So I enjoyed that Easter egg, but another interesting Easter egg, Kevin, was this. Wow, Fury has a lot of gravestones. He's died a lot. Here we're seeing on the screen, if you're watching on our YouTube channel, not only the gravestone that Fury went to recover the harvest in episode 5, but we see the gravestone from Nicholas Fury from Captain America: The Winter Soldier, and apparently there's a few more Fury gravestones around the world.
Yeah, does he? I find it funny that he's got a grave, those indoor graves, that he's got a separate graves, one for his eye patch, one for his gun, and whatever else he carries. He just doesn't put them all in one. I thought that was funny.
But I thought this was kind of a cool concept that they had with Fury. This is the kind of spy stuff you expect from Fury.
Yeah.
So
I wish we would have gotten more of that.
Yeah, well, okay, there's that too. Kevin, the next one, that's a lot of DNA. When we see the list of all the
are they keeping this, and are they did our heroes give these up like voluntarily, or?
Well, apparently most of these came from scrolls after the Battle of Earth, where they collected blood samples and things like that. But here's the list that was shown on the screen of the different people they collected DNA from. Ghost, which from the villain from AntMan and the Wasp, which means Fury she was a Shield thing for a time. So Fury
that's why she did that weird little phasing thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Captain America, Corvus Glaive, Proxima Midnight, Thanos, Outrider is one of the servants of Thanos, Captain Marvel, Cull Obsidian, Ebony Maw, Korg, Drax, Mantis, the Frost Beast, the Hulk, Black Panther, Chitauri, Valkyrie, Gamora, Thor, Flora Colossus, aka Groot, and the Winter Soldier.
I liked it when Gaia used Mantis, the emotion thing or whatever it was.
Yeah.
That was cool.
Let's talk about the Super Scrolls for a second, because I've heard some people arguing, how can they have all these powers? Most of these people, it's in their DNA. Their DNA has been altered by either something or they were born with these abilities. The one thing that to me is was one of the issues I had with that whole fight scene. There is no way they have that good of use of those powers right out of the gate.
No, that didn't bother me. There was too much other stuff that was bugging me to have the reality of whether or not they could expertly use all those powers.
Well, but here's the other thing. We now have a character running around the MCU who by far and away is more powerful than pretty much anybody in the MCU.
Gaia,
right?
Yeah.
And are we completely convinced that Gravik is dead? I mean, he did have Extremis and all this stuff. How do we know there's not a slow recovery to bring him back?
Yeah, if you're gonna shoot him in the head and he can live from that, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Did they ever write into any of these stories that like this stuff only lasts temporary and that is there a weakness to getting all these powers? I don't know.
They've got to figure out something, because this is one of those dangling plot threads that I think they kind of wrote on the fly and didn't quite think it through, and now they've got a mess on their hands. They're going to have to figure out a way to get Gaia's power levels down at some point, because otherwise it's just going to be ridiculous.
Well, Miss Marvel is extremely powerful, so yeah.
Oh yeah, but she's got Miss Marvel's DNA or Captain Marvel's DNA as part of her too. So
Yeah, that's what I meant, Captain Marvel.
so I mean, it's just it's an over it's overkill, and this is just bad This is just bad writing to leave this kind of dangling. But the next thing I have to Kevin is one-term president, and the reason why I'm bringing this up is obviously we have President Ritson. Fury actually tells him that's real one-term president stuff after he basically creates this national worldwide fear and conspiracy where you have innocent humans getting killed because people think they're scrolls. The reason why this is important as an Easter egg, Kevin, is because Harrison Ford has been cast to take over the William Hurt role of Thunderbolt Ross.
Yes.
William Hurt. In the upcoming Thunderbolts movie and in the new Captain America movie as well, he is supposed to be the president of the United States in those films. So obviously these films are reflecting after the events of Secret Invasion. So yeah, it's looking like that Ritson was probably definitely doing some one-term president stuff.
Yeah.
So, but the other thing I want to get to, Kevin, is, the Skrulls were impersonating a lot of people, and a lot of people on the internet have noticed this. They feel this particular person who you see at the end of episode 6, when they find that big bank of people that are all there, kind of looks a little like Evan Peters, aka Quicksilver. Now, we've already been given one false Evan Peters moment in WandaVision, but
I'm not going there, Kyle. I don't like the way they handled that in WandaVision. It was stupid.
Yeah. Well, I'm not arguing you with that point. That was one of the things. But this would be a way to actually bring back Quicksilver if Quicksilver was a Skrull.
Did you notice how many... These are the bodies that were lying down and comatose in those coffin-y type things. Mm-hmm. And then they go to the other one where the people were standing up, and that's where you had Rhodes and what's his name?
Martin Freeman's character.
Yeah,
Everett
Martin Freeman's character, yeah. There's a lot of people laying there, so that's interesting.
Yeah, so it's going to be curious to see how many people was like, oh, this was a Skrull. Marvel's just giving them an easy cheap out on a lot of things.
Yeah.
Another thing that came up was at the end of the episode how the Kree now want to have peace talks with the Skrulls. The Kree Skrull thing has been a long time Marvel Comics thing. Obviously, that was a big conflict that was in Captain Marvel. This could be. I think this is going to be one of the big things that might carry over into the Marvels. Kevin, is this whole Kree Skrull treaty negotiation aspect of it, because obviously we know how the ties Captain Marvel has to both of these races as well, and we know that the villain in Captain Marvel is a female Kree warrior. So I think this is something that actually I believe is going to be one of the bigger plot threads that goes into the Marvels, is what's going on between the relationship between the Kree and the Skrulls.
Right. Yeah. That'll be interesting.
And lastly, we have the thing that has got a lot of the internet talking, Kevin, is our good friend Colonel James Rhodes. Now, there's a lot of speculation, and I can understand why. The Roadie we find is in hospital garb. He cannot walk. So a lot of people are now speculating, and Marvel, nobody's shooting this down. You don't see Kevin Feige shooting this down, that Roadie has been a Skrull since sometime after Civil War, but before Endgame and Infinity War, and which is
no. He had to be Roadie at Endgame. He had to.
Well, that's where a lot of people are jumping, because you see the Roadie, he's paralyzed, he's in hospital guard. Did they get taken from the hospital after Civil War, and then that's the Roadie we've got? There is some speculation that it's a Roadie that was probably captured sometime shortly after Endgame, and that the Roadie we saw in the Falcon and the Winter Soldier was actually
that makes more sense.
So this is good. This is one of the big mysteries that's to play out, and I think this is designed to be that way, because as we talked a little bit about in the prior episode of True Believers, Marvel is working on an Armor Wars movie, which was supposed to be a show on Disney Plus. They've converted it to a movie, which is going to be with Don Cheadle, and I think that could be a lot of one of the things that they will be dealing with is when was Rhodey taken? I think that's where they'll answer that question. And what is Rhodey's mindset after being through all this? Because he's
Yeah,
obviously been off the board for a while.
yeah, that should be addressed definitely in Armor Wars. Yeah,
So
yeah.
that covers the Easter eggs. Like I said, there's a lot of them, some interesting ones, some fun ones. But let's get into phase. We're doing things a little different here, so we're going to jump right into phase 3. Okay, Kevin. Phase 3 is usually where we go in a little bit deeper into the plot and talk talk about
By the way, excellent job on those Easter eggs, dude. That was done really, really well.
it. Thank you, sir. We're going to do phase 3 a little differently though, because if you've been following social media, the reactions to Secret Invasion now that the final episodes come out have not been good. In fact, if you go by Rotten Tomatoes ranking, episode 6 is the lowest rated Marvel thing ever to come out. It's at 13% on
I think
Rotten
some people
Tomatoes.
just given up on the show. That's why, you know.
Well, that and I mean, just even between the reviewers and everything else, it's gotten low ratings. People are not happy, including our good friends over at Geek. Kristen Howard wrote her article review for the final episode. I'm going to just read a few excerpts from this. She opens up with, as I sit here staring into the middle distance, wondering where to start unpacking the damp squib that was the Secret Invasion finale. It's hard to ask myself anything but what the hell happened here. Secret Invasion should have theoretically been an exciting Marvel event spun from a notoriously flawed comic, much like Civil War. So it feels there was a lot
Whoa,
of
whoa, whoa,
scope.
whoa, whoa, whoa. I'm sorry. Can I stop you there for a second, Kyle? I'm sorry to
Yeah.
interrupt. Is it notoriously flawed this Secret Invasion? I thought it was a big deal. It was like one of the most things out there. Her saying that says other people feel the same way.
A lot of people feel the same way because of how they handled it after the fact and what directions
Then
they took with it.
okay, it's weird that that's the first time I've heard of that. That's interesting.
Yeah. It was
Sorry
a
to
big
interrupt.
deal. The comic was a big deal, but people had some mixed reactions to it because of some of the things they made of who were scrolls and who were not.
Okay.
Um, she goes on to say what we got was one angry Skrull in the show was one angry Skrull who wanted to eradicate humanity by making us nuke each other, while he himself became a super Skrull by getting juiced up on Avengers DNA. The key people replaced Rhodey, Martin Freeman, which of course ever Craig Ross, the most divorced man in the MCU. The hero was a tired man who has failed his wife, a desperate species for an entire desperate species for reasons still unknown. Nothing about any of this is more creative or interesting than Marvel's comic book thought starter, and the central themes of it, both politically and dramatically, were mishandled throughout the show's run, regardless. She kind of closes out with, I don't want to spend the finale review moaning the entire time, so I'm going to try to pick through the nonsense that she found good in Secret Invasion. Olivia Coleman, brilliant as always. Jackson and Cheadle tried their best to make these scripts interesting with committed performances, which they always do. Visually, excluding the CGI, it was certainly some of the best looking of the MCU shows to date, with excellent lighting and some interesting design choices. It did attempt to explore some political and sociological ideas about the plight of refugees and the way we respond to people we consider to be outsiders, with attempt being the operative word. A failed attempt is still an attempt. But those things weren't good enough to elevate the series to the realms of passable, let alone good. And I'm left asking myself just one final question. Would I have even continued watching Secret Invasion beyond the premiere if I wasn't a card carrying to the bitter end Marvel enjoyer? Would you?
Uh, I love that last comment she says there, Kyle, because we are those bitter to the end card carrying Marvel MCU enjoyers, basically. And so we kind of feel like it's now a job to finish, especially if we're podcasting about them, and doing these video podcasts on YouTube. We want to share our opinions on these things as soon as possible so people can enjoy these things fresh and new with us. But it's tough when it's struggling from the very beginning. You know what I mean? And she feels it too. I can see.
I can agree, and that's where we're going here next, Kevin. You kind of talked about it a little bit when we were talking about our initial reactions to episodes 5 and 6. I want to talk about Secret Invasion, what went right, what went wrong, and I also want to talk about where Marvel is at. We do have some posts. You put a post out on Facebook. We've got some comments on that, and we'll get to those. But I want to just drop a few things before we get into that conversation, Kevin. Kind of being the Marvel guy, both comics and MCU here, and I was pretty strong, and right now there's part of me that's angry. There's part of me that is very angry that this is the way this series was. This series had a ton of potential, and when I go back and look at it, the frustration for me here is several things. One is you had a phenomenal cast. This show was a waste of some incredibly good actors.
Great
I'm going to
point.
even say King Adair, who played
Ben-
Gravik,
oh.
and Ensley King Adair, who played Gravik. I thought he was very good in this series until they got to the finale and they just wrote him like the typical over mastermind one character villain in this. I thought he was very intriguing through halfway through episode 5.
I'm going to disagree. I think he did as best as he could for the material that he got. I like it when I can sympathize with the villain a little bit here. I just don't see how he got so misguided and vengeful and hatred. Yes, Fury didn't keep the promise that he tried, because of the blip had something to do with it, and I don't understand why, he just got so angry and had to be a villain and didn't understand the blip thing and how that affected people in the situation. No one saw that coming. I just didn't care for him. He's a good actor, but I just don't feel like he had the best material to work with.
I think a lot
he was just stereotypical villain to me.
I think they turned him into that. I think there was a lot of interesting things they did in the first couple of episodes with him, and then it kind of turned and they went into stereotype, which is the other problem. The reason why this show didn't succeed was just the writing. And when I look at the writing, I look at this in a few different ways. One, they were trying to do way too many plot stories throughout the series. And because they were trying to do so many, none of them felt satisfying, and none of them felt like they came to any kind of satisfying conclusion either. You have Fury being disenchanted. You have this love interest story with Fury. You have the Scrolls. You have about 3 or 4 other things going on. You've got the whole plot line with Talos and his family. There was too much. They could have easily written this series with a disenfranchised Fury coming back to Earth. We find that you can even play the love interest story. Do some flashbacks to make us invested in that love story. Give us more depth of that to get us more invested. You could have written it to where Gravik is the way he is towards Fury because he looked at Fury as a father figure who let him down. And you could have played just those 3 things alone with the overarching story of these Skrull rebels trying to take over the Earth, and you would have been good. But because they tried to and had Talos be a part of it because it's Skrulls, do things with Gaia, you could have had those little side stories, but they just couldn't decide on the direction. You have some very powerful things that happened in this series that were completely nullified because they couldn't decide on the direction of this series. The death of Maria Hill, whether you were a fan of hers or not, her being killed, I see where it's upsetting to fans of her, but they could have made that such a more powerful event in what happened, and instead it became an afterthought almost immediately, and that was a problem for me. Talos' death just became a joke in this thing. Talos' death. We were asking right after it happened, is he dead or alive? Ben Mendelsohn was one of the highlights of this. Of this show.
Yep.
This is a show that they just didn't know what to do with it, and I think they did. I think they felt like, okay, we it's Sam Jackson. We've got to get this out. We're just putting this out. There was no plan. There was nothing. I'm gonna compare it to this, Kevin. I want to see if you kind of agree with me because I look at the run times of some of these episodes, and I'm gonna compare it to Star Wars Obi-Wan Kenobi in this aspect. I think Secret Invasion, much like Obi-Wan, was initially designed to be a film that they stretched out into a TV series and they both suffered because of it, because they basically just tried to add on plot elements instead of just going, okay, let's get back to the drawing board, really rewrite this and make it make sense for television. I am truly wondering if there is an issue with both MCU and with Marvel and with Star Wars too, with the Disney Plus in general, that they are getting people who don't necessarily know how to write for television and these kind of things. They are getting movie writers who are trying to write TV movies in 6 to 8 part series instead. And I think they can't. That's becoming a real problem for Disney Plus shows.
The problem, I agree. I agree with everything you said. The other things that are standing out to me too, the problem with this show too, is we were expecting a more of a Falcon in the Winter or the Winter Soldier type thing because the espionage feel that had. That's why we love that movie so much. It's because they were always on the run. You always felt they were threatened. They were going to be exposed. Hydra was there to kill them and make them look bad and all that kind of stuff. So they're always on the run. And you had familiar faces working with each other against the bigger threat. What you do in this film, the only familiar faces that you had, they were either out of commission because they were Scrolls, you killed one right away, and the other one died halfway through. And so I never felt that Fury was a major threat. He wasn't being chased down enough. He didn't have any Avenger friends help him through this series, because what they did have was either killed off or just not written into the story. I mean, yes, we get it. It's a Fury fueled series, but where's the other people that helped him? Why didn't they come in? Why didn't we have some cameos to help him through this? Because I don't see that a major threat to the world in World War III and million Skrulls on the planet, and Fury's only going to handle it himself. I don't know. So there was a lot to that, and I forgot my other point. I'll bring it up when I remember it.
Well, I think, and to address your point about Fury handling himself, I think when you write this show, and you got to think about certain aspects of it. I'm fine with the aspect of Fury dealing with a problem with himself and not maybe having the superpowered Avengers involved, and I think there's a multitude of reasons for that. But you could have built a team around to support Fury better than what they did. You had Maria Hill, you had Sonya Falsworth, you had Talos, you had Gaia.
Wouldn't you have loved to have seen Sonya Falsworth and Maria Hill share some scenes together? How cool would
I think that would have. I think they could have had a great female discussion about Fury.
Yeah. Oh my God. There was just such missed opportunities with this series.
You even had Fury's wife, who could have, if handled better, could have been a part of this too. So you could have had a team.
She should have been in right from the beginning, and they should have been teaming up together. Not it'd be this big reveal that we had to wait a few episodes for, and oh no, she's a Skrull. Oh, but they're in love.
I think you had the components to have a support team around Fury that would have been interesting, but again, they didn't know how to write it, and I think that ultimately that's what it comes down to. Now, Kevin, I don't want to make this a bash Secret Invasion, because there are a few points that come out of Secret Invasion that I think if we're going to talk a little positive, and if you're going to start with the positive, and you brought this up a little bit earlier, Kevin, there is no bigger positive in Secret Invasion than Olivia Coleman as Sonya Falsworth. Her and Ben Mendelsohn were the heart of this show. Truthfully, they had some of the prime moments, but she was just amazing in every scene she was in. You had fun. The show always picked up when she was on screen and when she was involved. And this is a character I'm hoping she comes back. I'm hoping she kind of turns into like the opposite coin of the Julia Louis-Dreyfus figure that her character, where you see her kind of being on the opposite page of that, working against her. If we're going to take Nick Fury out of the mix, I'd love it to be Val versus Sonya Falsworth, a little bit in the spy game and in the international espionage, political side of the MCU. I think that would be a lot of fun. But yeah, Olivia Coleman was the highlight of this show, bar none.
I agree completely. She ate up every scene she was in. She kind of reminded me a little bit of who's the Suicide Squad, Amanda Waller, but like she reminded me of the Amanda Waller, but much more charming and fun. Still badass in her little charming demeanor, which kind of disarms you at first, but then like she'll shoot you and kill you if she has to. I love this character Farnsworth Olivia has done. My favorite part of this series,
Yeah.
and well, let me just be honest, probably the highlight that um, could have used a lot more of her, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I agree completely. I think there are a couple of plot threads, like I mentioned earlier, that I think are going to be interesting to follow coming out of this show. I think everything with Roadie is going to be interesting. I think whatever is going to come out of this with the Scrolls and the Kree and the Marvels is going to be an interesting follow up. And I think the state of the world after this with the paranoia is going to play into a couple of future Marvel projects that we're getting at. But Kevin, that leads me to kind of the last part of this particular phase that I want to talk about, because I want to talk about Marvel in general right now. You said it a few times. It's been more misses than hits recently. Disney Plus has not been kind to Marvel. Outside of a couple of things, for the most part, most people have felt like these shows have been average at best. I mean, come on. A lot of people are making the joke that She-Hulk called how Secret Invasion was going to end in its finale, talking about this problem.
Forgot about She-Hulk. Actually, that was enjoyable. That was just fun.
Yeah. I, I truly do believe this, and I've talked about this a little bit before. I think this is really a interesting point in time for Marvel, because I really feel like between the writer strike going on and some of that stuff, you got here's what we have left that we know for sure that is coming out. You've got Loki season 2 in October. You have the Marvels as it stands right now coming out beginning in November, and at the end of November, the entire series of Echo drops. Then there's really kind of a cut line there. And I think that cut line is a chance for Marvel to maybe start working on writing the ship. Now, we know that there's a few projects that are still in the works. Deadpool 3 is going on. Everybody's excited about that. It's Deadpool. Deadpool's always going to be
Wolverine, buddy. Plus all the cameos we're going to get.
I am excited for Captain America Brave New World. I'm really excited for Anthony Mackie to get his chance to star as Captain America.
I'm not excited yet. I need to see a trailer.
Yeah, well, we're ways.
I like the Harrison Ford casting. I like Anthony Mackie. I just hope I hope it's fun.
And I believe Sebastian Stan is going to be in that film as well. So anytime you got those two together, that seems to work magic. We've got the Thunderbolts as well. We got more to deal with that. And then obviously there's several other projects. Daredevil Born Again, which I'm actually very excited about because I love Charlie Cox as Daredevil. D'Onofrio
TV series, right? Yeah.
Yeah, but that's actually going to get an Andor kind of treatment. It's going to be 2 seasons of 9 episodes each season. So that's going to be a bigger project. We've got the Agatha Coven of Darkness that is still was being worked on before the writer's strike. But
I wouldn't be surprised if they cut that one.
I know they're very high on that, and I think they have some Elizabeth Olsen plans for that one. So,
talk about a character that needs to be redeemed. Jesus.
Yeah. I think though Marvel has a chance to kind of do a little bit of a reset. I don't want to say reset, but like I said, writing of the ship. And we have to. And I think they're still sitting on 2 big cards to play, and I think these are the 2 big key cards to get right. Obviously, Fantastic Four is coming at some point, and I think that's a huge card for the MCU. I'm liking some of the rumored casting. I'm hearing of Vanessa Kirby as Sue Storm. I think that I would be very excited if that happens. And the other big thing that they're sitting on, and I think this is where you're going to see, as much as a lot of people are going to be frustrated by, it's going to be a little bit yet, because I think they're going to build towards it like they built the Infinity War, is obviously Mutants and X-Men. I think I would rather see them take their time and build that right than try to use it as their get out of jail free card and rush it. So let's see what happens there. But Kevin, I do think that a slower pace to the MCU is much needed right now for a lot of reasons. And obviously it's kind of getting, like everything else, it's kind of getting forced upon them right now, whether they like it or not.
And I'm not excited for Kang being a villain the way Ant-Man in the Quantum Verse left me with Kang. I could care less about Kang right now. I'm not excited for it.
So it's going to be interesting to see what plays out with Marvel, but they definitely, I'm hoping this is a wake-up call for them. I'm hoping that this reaction really goes, okay. Because ultimately, this show felt like, okay, we just needed to put something out. We're just throwing this out there. There was no reason to have this show. Maybe somewhere down the line they redeem it, and there's some things that come come out of this that become pertinent, but I don't see that happening anytime soon. It's
It's not a
disappointing.
rewatchable for me, that's for sure.
I think it's not a rewatchable for anybody other than, okay, maybe there's a point I need to go back and watch this episode because they brought up something from it from before. But there's work to be done, and it's a long way to go. But yeah, it's a shame because it was an incredible group of actors who I think did the best with what they could have, and I just hope that the Marvels is what I hope it's going to be and fun, and maybe get a little bit of redemption for the MCU, because I think that I'm not gonna say it's down and like, oh my god, it's failing, but there's definitely some cracks in the dam and there's some plastic surgery that needs to be done on the MCU to kind of get the ship going in the right direction again, Kevin.
Mm-hmm.
So with that, Kevin, you put out a post on Facebook. I
thought you were gonna forget that.
No, I did not forget
that. Felt like you were wrapping things up there.
No. But you put out a post on. I wanted to wait because there were some very, very interesting comments, and I wanted to make sure I had gotten my thoughts out of the way before but because we had some surprising comments and we had some not so surprising comments on the Facebook post.
Yeah, I shared a post from Marvel MCU India, and it says, Secret Invasion final review. Secret Invasion finishes off in a disappointing style. A seed of a compelling story has been sown, but it can't mask what has been, and by large, one of the weakest and rushed MCU series. Secret Invasion finale, they had the source material, but ended up as one of the weakest and rushed series for MCU. That's Marvel Fans India. And I put a post on our True Believers Facebook group saying thoughts, tagged you in it. And we got some comments. Friend Ryan said, finished finale already? I need to catch up. I only saw one episode. Kind of tells you right there that hasn't grasped everyone wanting to jump into it, you know? My friend Melody said, I enjoyed it. It was slow at first, but then it got really good. My friend William J said, this may be my least favorite MCU show, mostly due to all of the missed opportunities. And that rang home with me because I replied to William saying it did feel like a lot of missed opportunities. And we discussed that, Kyle. There was a lot of stuff they could have done. And you saying that you probably agree with him that it is one of the least favorite of the MCU offerings out there. And you would also agree it was missed opportunities, right?
Oh, absolutely. I think that is the crime of this show, is missed opportunities. That is the ultimate crime of this show, because there was a lot more things they could have done, and I'll say it. You know what it feels like to me, Kevin? It feels to me like the sequel trilogy of Star Wars. Nobody was talking to each other, and everybody was writing a different story.
Good point. My friend Lee, of course, co-host here on Fandom Podcast Network for Bloody Kings Highlander podcast, says probably the best MCU after Falcon and the Winter Soldier. So Lee really liked it. It actually moved the needle, unlike WandaVision, and exists in our regular timeline, unlike Loki and What If. It sets the stage for a new stance on Earth and makes Saber a more meaningful presence. Kyle, your thoughts on what Lee had to say?
So I know Lee looks at things a little bit differently, as far as especially with the MCU, and I'm not going to fault anybody for saying they like this show. That's everybody's personal opinion. I disagree with the needle moving thing, because I think this moved the needle a little bit, but it should have moved the needle so much more. And I think what I will say about that aspect is it depends on what Marvel does with it going forward. But I also think that's the problem Marvel has right now. Everything. It seems like every show is like, okay, well, the next thing's going to move something forward. The next thing's going to make this thing more important storyline, instead of just making what we're doing right here, right now, important.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of feels like the writers have kind of got onto, okay, my job is to write a plot thread that's going to carry over into something else, instead of just writing something that is its own thing.
Yeah. Jill Burticus, our Highlander friend, replied to Lee saying, "I think it's very good. Maybe the subject matter makes people uncomfortable for some reason."
I can see that a little bit. There's some interesting subject matter that people haven't really talked about a lot in this. I just
The
for me
subject
personally,
matter didn't make me uncomfortable at all, but I can understand what she's saying.
yeah, I can too. I think it again it just comes back to me. It was
Uh,
poor writing and how it was handled.
Lee replied saying, "Jill, people just want more of the same because they don't pay attention to the stories or don't want to." Could see that that's a possibility with some fans, especially the casual fans. But we're not the casual fans. I don't necessarily want more of the same. I would like some continuity. I would like better stories told, and I do pay attention. I mean, we podcast about them all the time. But I'm sure there's some truth there with some of the casual fans, Kyle.
Can I bring up a point too that I'm surprised Lee didn't catch on this because it's something that's been sticking in my craw with the last couple episodes. President Ritson gets injured. He's in a public hospital, and then we get to a point where we're talking about launching nuclear weapons. You can't tell me they're not moving the president of the United States to some secure medical bunker somewhere and having him protected. I understand we had the whole Roadie scroll thing on that. Maybe that was part of it, but yeah, that was stretching my point of disbelief. There, it's like, no, the president's not sitting in some hospital in London.
Right. We got here. Eric, my friend Eric, said it wasn't bad at all. And then I was messaging with Derek Marshy. He was asking me if I'd seen the episode because he wanted to chat about it. And I said no, I hadn't. I had stuff I was doing. I didn't make a priority for it. He'd seen it before me. He said boring. It literally did nothing. It didn't step up anything. The villain was just a dull psychomaniac that didn't do anything with Fury. The MC universe wouldn't have been any different had they never made this, other than you could have asked, "Oh, who was a Skrull?" But if anything, it just made it dumber. And I can see where he's coming from.
I definitely get the boring side of it. I think this is an MCU problem right now. I'm waiting to see. We're waiting. There's too much of waiting to see for the next thing, and seeing
Yeah.
what the effects are on the next thing. They need to start writing their stories to where I don't need a clean bow on everything, but at least make resolution to what your main plot threads are.
Yeah.
And they didn't do that here. So with that, Kevin, I'm going to just kick us right into phase 4, and let's get things closed up around here on this episode of True Believers. So definitely one of our more interesting episodes of True Believers since we started the podcast. It's a shame. I'm disappointed. I'm really hoping. I'm still an MCU believer. I still believe in Marvel. I still believe they are capable of putting out a much better product than this. At the end of the day, Kevin, I just feel like this show was rushed. This show just didn't have proper direction sorted out, and I just feel like it was like, okay, we got to get this out. Let's put it out. And I think this show suffered from it, and I think it's going to be a while before we get. I'm gonna be honest. I think it's going to be a bit before we get something in the MCU that's really going to make us get super quality. I'm hoping that Marvel's is good and it's going to be fun, but I also don't see it as one of these like, oh my god, that's a mind blowing Marvel. And obviously, then Loki season 2. A lot of people love Loki season 1. I'm very mixed about it, Kevin. I know you weren't a huge fan of it either. Let's see what happens. And I echo. I'm just treating that as a Daredevil prequel at this point. There's reasons why they're dropping the whole show at one time. So it's going to be interesting to see how some things play out here. I don't want to talk about everything comic being bad, though, Kevin, because I'm going to throw something out there. It isn't a Marvel thing, though. It is actually a DC product. And I just want to throw this out for some people if they're looking for something to kind of cleanse their comic palette. HBO Max or Cartoon Network. They have started a new series, My Adventures with Superman. Jack Quaid of Star Trek fame and The Boys fame is voicing Superman in this show. This is a fun animated Superman show, which is the Superman we should have. If you need to cleanse your comic palette, I'm just throwing it out there.
It's going to be weird hearing Jack Quaid not be Boimler from Star Trek Lower Decks, but be Superman. That's going to be interesting.
Yeah, but it's kind of got an anime style to it, so it's interesting. I'm really liking what they're doing with it. 4 episodes are out. You can watch it again either on Cartoon Network or if you have HBO Max, it's on HBO Max as well. Kevin, do you have any final thoughts before we close out this week's episode of True Believers?
Um, I'm just disappointed in Secret Invasion. I just, you guys haven't figured that out already. I just wanted something different from it, I guess. I don't know, from what I got. And I wasn't happy with how certain characters were handled. So I don't know. I'm done with it. Moving on from it. I am looking forward to the Marvels. I will be seeing that opening weekend.
No, I'll make sure that you get invited to my next Tea and Torture with Sonya Fallsworth.
Please do.
That's always
I
a
like
good
to
laugh.
talk to her. I like to have a few moments before she kills me.
Well, that is going to close out this episode of True Believers here on the Fandom Podcast Network. Of course, if you are watching on our YouTube channel, thank you so much. Please remember to like, subscribe, and share out our YouTube channel. If you're listening on our audio version, thank you for listening, whether it's on Podbean or one of the other great podcast catchers out there, whether it's iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or so many others. Again, give us a subscribe there too. If you want to get a hold of us directly, you can also find the True Believers page on Facebook. We try to keep you updated on all the happenings of the MCU. Of course, there's the main Fandom Podcast Network page where we cover everything in fandom. You can email us at fandompodcastnetwork@gmail.com. Find us on Instagram at Fandom Podcast Network or on Twitter at FanPod Network. I am Kyle, your host for this interesting episode of True Believers. You can find me on Twitter at AKyleW or on Instagram and Threads at AKyleFandom. Kevin, where can we find you as you prep for the next, hopefully much better addition to the MCU?
You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Threads at Spartan_Phoenix. And of course on Facebook.
As always, I want to thank all you wonderful listeners and viewers out there for joining us.
Thank you.
Whether it's good or bad, we're going to tell you our honest thoughts. And you know what? We know the MCU can be better, and I still have my faith. So until next time, as always, Excelsior and make ours Marvel.